The stars trembled as 10,000 warships tore through the fabric of space itself. Each vessel was massive, the size of a small moon, covered in weapons that gleamed under the light of distant suns. The Vrelian Empire had arrived at the edge of human territory, and they had come prepared for war. Supreme Overlord Vexthar stood on the bridge of his flagship, the Eternal Destroyer. His three eyes scanned the void ahead with satisfaction. 10,000 years of preparation had led to this moment. His ancestors had discovered the prophecy in ancient ruins on their homeworld, carved into stone older than their civilization. The prophecy spoke of a species from a distant blue world, beings called humans who would one day rise to challenge the galaxy itself. From that day forward, the Vrelians had dedicated everything to preparing for humanity. Every child was trained for war. Every resource was poured into weapons research. Every simulation ran scenarios of human combat. They had intercepted ancient broadcasts from Earth, radio waves that traveled through space for centuries. They studied human wars, human tactics, human weaknesses. They knew everything about humanity, or so they believed. War Master Krelnak approached the Supreme Overlord, his armored boots clicking against the metal floor. He had lived for 300 years, training every single day for this confrontation. "My lord, our sensors have detected a human vessel ahead. Just one ship, small class. A corvette, according to our databases." Vexthar's mandibles clicked together in what passed for a Vrelian smile. "One ship? They send one ship against our armada? Perhaps they come to surrender immediately." Far ahead, alone in the darkness of space, the UNS Indomitable drifted quietly. On its bridge, Commander Hugh sat in his command chair, his eyes closed. He was not sleeping. He was connected to the ship through a neural interface, feeling every system, every sensor, every piece of data, as if it were part of his own body. This was how humans fought now. Their minds merged with their machines, thinking and reacting faster than any physical control could allow. Captain Jiwan stood at the tactical station, her fingers dancing across holographic displays that only she could see through her own neural link. "Commander, I'm reading their formation. It's interesting." Hyuk opened his eyes. "Interesting how?" "They're using a battle formation from 20th century Earth naval warfare. The pattern matches old battleship groups from World War II. It's like they studied our ancient history and stopped there." At the engineering station, Taeyong let out a low whistle. "That was over 200 years ago. Do they really think we haven't changed since then?" Minhyo, the youngest officer on the bridge, looked worried. "Sir, I count 10,000 capital ships. Even if their technology is outdated, those are serious numbers." Hyuk stood up from his chair and walked to the view screen. The Vrelian fleet was visible now, a massive wall of ships that blocked out the stars behind them. "Numbers mean nothing if they're fighting the wrong war. Open a channel. Let's hear what they have to say." The view screen flickered and Supreme Overlord Vexthar's face appeared. He was imposing, nearly 3 meters tall even sitting down, with skin like rough stone and eyes that glowed with confidence. When he spoke, his voice rumbled with authority. "Humans of Earth, I am Supreme Overlord Vexthar of the Vrelian Empire. For 10,000 years we have prepared for this moment. We know your tactics. We know your weapons. We have studied your kind since before your civilization reached the stars. You cannot surprise us. You cannot defeat us. Surrender now and we will make your end quick." Hyuk remained calm. Jiwan had already analyzed the transmission, noting the outdated assumptions in every word. The Vrelians thought humans still used nuclear weapons. They thought human ships needed large crews. They thought human reaction times were limited by physical controls. "Supreme Overlord Vexthar," Hyuk replied, his voice steady. "I appreciate the history lesson. But you've made a critical error. You prepared for the humans we used to be, not the humans we've become. 10,000 years is a long time to study. 200 years is plenty of time to evolve." Vexthar's eyes narrowed. "You speak bravely for someone commanding a single small ship against an empire. I offer you one final chance. Surrender." "Counteroffer," Hyuk said. "Turn your fleet around. Leave this sector. We'll forget this happened." The Supreme Overlord's laugh boomed through the transmission. "You are either incredibly brave or incredibly foolish. War Master Krelnak, show them the futility of resistance. Destroy that ship." The transmission ended. On the Vrelian flagship, Krelnak gave the order. 200 ships moved forward, their weapons charging with energy that crackled across their hulls. According to their calculations, based on ancient human combat data, This would be more than enough firepower to overwhelm any defense the humans could mount. On the Indomitable, Minho watched his displays with growing anxiety. Sir, they're charging weapons. Energy signatures are massive. If even one of those hits us, our shields won't hold. They won't hit us, Ji-won said calmly. She was running predictive algorithms through her neural interface, calculating the Vrelians' targeting solutions. Everything they did was slow, methodical, exactly by the book. The book they had been studying for 10,000 years. The very old, very outdated book. Hyuk returned to his command chair. Taeyang, status on the Cascade Protocol? The engineer checked his systems. All green, Commander. I have to say, though, we've never used this in actual combat, only simulations. Today we find out if the simulations were accurate. Ji-won, are you ready? Tactical solutions prepared. I've already predicted their firing patterns. It's almost too easy, sir. They telegraph every move 3 seconds in advance. Hyuk took a deep breath. He had hoped this confrontation could be avoided, but the Vrelians had given them no choice. 10,000 years of preparation had made them confident, perhaps too confident. They had studied humanity's past so thoroughly that they never considered humanity's future. All crew, this is Commander Hyuk. Battle stations. We're about to show the Vrelians what 200 years of human innovation looks like. Activate the Cascade Protocol. And remember, we're not here to destroy them. We're here to teach them a lesson they'll never forget. The Indomitable's systems hummed to life. Across the ship, technologies that the Vrelians had never imagined began to activate. Quantum entanglement cores, singularity shielding, neural warfare arrays, self-replicating nanite swarms. These weren't weapons of mass destruction. They were precision instruments, designed by a species that had learned to fight smart rather than fight hard. Minho's hands hovered over his controls. Sir, they're firing. Let them, Hyuk said quietly. Now we show them the truth. Their 10,000 years of preparation ends in the next 5 minutes. The first Vrelian energy blasts screamed through space toward the tiny human ship. War Master Krelnak watched his displays, certain of victory. The humans had nowhere to run, no time to dodge, no shield strong enough to survive. He was wrong on all counts. The battle for the future of the galaxy had begun. The energy blasts from 200 Vrelian warships turned space into a deadly light show. Each blast carried enough power to vaporize a city, and they all converged on the exact point where the Indomitable had been floating just moments before. War Master Krelnak watched his tactical display with satisfaction as the targeting computers confirmed multiple hits. But when the energy dissipated, the human ship was gone. Not destroyed, simply gone. What happened? Krelnak demanded, his voice rising. Where is the human vessel? His sensor officer's hands trembled as he checked the readings. I don't know, War Master. The ship was there, then it wasn't. Our sensors show it existed in multiple locations simultaneously before disappearing entirely. On the bridge of the Indomitable, 3,000 kilometers away from where the Vrelians were still looking, Ji-won allowed herself a small smile. Quantum uncertainty jump successful. They're still scanning the area we left. Should I tell them where we are? Commander Hyuk shook his head. Not yet. Minho, how did our shields handle the energy dispersion? The young weapons officer checked his readings, his eyes wide with amazement. We didn't even need shields, sir. The jump happened before their weapons could reach us. Captain Ji-won's predictive algorithms calculated their firing solution 3 seconds before they pulled the trigger. Taeyang laughed from the engineering station. 3 seconds might as well be 3 hours when you can move through quantum space. Their targeting systems are using physical calculations. They aim at where we are. By the time their weapons arrive, we're somewhere else. Hyuk stood and walked to the view screen. The massive Vrelian fleet still floated in formation, their weapons charging again. They looked confused, their ships moving in patterns that suggested uncertainty. 10,000 years of preparation, and they had encountered something they never anticipated in the first 30 seconds of battle. Now we move to Phase 2, Hyuk said. Activate the Cascade Protocol. Full deployment. Minho hesitated, his finger hovering over the control. Sir, once we release them, we can't take them back. I know. That's why we set them to non-lethal parameters. We're not here to kill anyone, Minho. We're here to end this fight before it really begins. Release the swarms. The young officer took a breath and activated the protocol. From the Indomitable, invisible to the Vrelian sensors, a cloud of nanites erupted into space. Each nanite was smaller than a grain of sand, and there were billions of them. They were programmed with one mission: infiltrate, adapt, and disable. The nanite swarms moved through space faster than any Vrelian sensor could track. They were designed to slip through shield frequencies to attach to hull plating, to find the microscopic gaps in even the most advanced armor. Within seconds, the first swarms reached the nearest Vrelian ships. On the Eternal Destroyer, Supreme Overlord Vexthar paced his bridge with growing frustration. "Find that human ship!" How can one small vessel simply vanish? "My lord," one of his officers called out, "we're receiving strange reports from our forward ships. System malfunctions, computer errors, weapon systems going offline." "What kind of malfunctions?" Vexthar demanded. Before the officer could answer, the lights on the bridge flickered. Then every display screen turned red. Vexthar watched in horror as his own flagship systems began shutting down one by one. Weapons offline. Shields flickering. "Navigation systems showing impossible readings. We're under attack!" Krelnak shouted. "But from what?" "I don't see any weapons fire." That was because the Vrelians were looking for the wrong kind of attack. They had prepared for missiles, for energy weapons, for physical projectiles. They had never considered that the humans might have weapons that couldn't be seen, that operated on a scale too small for their sensors to detect. The nanites worked with terrifying efficiency. They infiltrated computer systems, rewriting code faster than any Vrelian technician could counter. They didn't destroy anything. Instead, they reprogrammed systems, changed targeting solutions, redirected power flows. Within 2 minutes, over 3,000 Vrelian ships had lost control of their primary systems. Jiwan watched the tactical display from her station, her neural interface allowing her to see the battle unfold in perfect detail. The nanites have successfully infiltrated 60% of their fleet. They're adapting to Vrelian computer architecture faster than predicted. "What are they doing to the ships?" Hayuk asked, though he already knew the answer. "Exactly what we programmed them to do. The Vrelian ships are now targeting each other. Their own computers think their neighboring vessels are enemies." Across the Vrelian fleet, chaos erupted. Ships that had stood side by side for the entire journey suddenly turned their weapons on each other. Energy blasts and missiles flew between vessels that had been allies moments before. Shields collapsed under friendly fire. Hulls were breached by weapons fired from ships in the same fleet. Krelnak realized what was happening and immediately gave orders to shut down all automated systems. But it was too late. The nanites had already spread too far, replicated too many times. Even manual controls were compromised. Every button pressed, every command given, was filtered through computer systems that no longer obeyed Vrelian orders. "This is impossible," Vexthar roared. "We prepared for every human tactic. We studied their warfare for 10,000 years. Taeyong, listening to the Vrelian communications through the indomitable sensors, shook his head sadly. That's exactly the problem. They studied warfare from 200 years ago. They have no defense against nanotechnology, because it didn't exist in the broadcasts they intercepted. The number of disabled Vrelian ships climbed rapidly. 3,000 became 4,000. 4,000 became 5,000. The mighty armada that had crossed the galaxy to conquer humanity was tearing itself apart without the humans firing a single conventional weapon. But Supreme Overlord Vexthar had one last card to play. Deep in the center of his fleet, protected by layers of ships and shields, was the Doomsday weapon. It had taken 5,000 years to build, harnessing the power of artificial stars. It was designed to crack planets, to shatter moons, to end entire civilizations with a single shot. "Activate the Doomsday weapon," Vexthar commanded. "If we cannot defeat them with our fleet, we will erase them from existence." The weapon began to charge. Energy readings spiked across the entire sector of space. Every sensor in the human ship screamed warnings as power levels climbed higher and higher. This was no ordinary weapon. This was something that could genuinely threaten them. Minho's voice was tight with worry. "Commander, energy readings are off the scale. Whatever that is, our shields won't stop it." "Nothing will stop it," Yuk remained calm. "Taeyong, is the Singularity Core ready?" The engineer checked his systems and nodded. "Ready, sir. But I have to remind you, we've never tested this at full power. The simulations say it will work, but simulations aren't reality. Today they have to be. The Vrelians left us no choice." Hyuk returned to his command chair and connected fully to the ship through his neural interface. He could feel the Singularity Core humming with contained power, a miniature black hole held in perfect suspension by forces that would have seemed like magic to humanity. just a century ago. The doomsday weapon fired. A beam of pure energy, bright enough to blind anyone looking at it directly, lanced across space toward the Indomitable. It carried enough destructive force to destroy everything in its path, to punch through any shield, to reduce matter itself to its component atoms. Now, Hayek said quietly, activate Singularity Core. Maximum aperture. In front of the Indomitable, space itself tore open. A black hole, small but impossibly dense, appeared directly in the path of the doomsday weapon's blast. The energy beam struck the event horizon and simply disappeared, pulled into the singularity where not even light could escape. For 3 seconds, the beam continued to pour into the black hole. The singularity core absorbed every erg of energy, growing slightly larger as it fed. Then, with perfect precision calculated by human computers and controlled by human minds merged with their machines, the singularity core reversed its polarity. The energy exploded back out, redirected by the black hole's intense gravity, sent back along the exact path it had come from. The doomsday weapon's own blast struck the Vrelian fleet with devastating force, not destroying the ships but overloading their systems, creating cascading failures throughout their formation. War Master Krelnak stared at his displays in absolute disbelief. The humans had just used a black hole as a shield and a weapon. It was beyond anything the Vrelians had imagined possible. The battle was entering its 4th minute, and the Vrelian Empire was already defeated. The reflected energy from the doomsday weapon swept through the Vrelian formation like a wave of destruction. Ships that had survived the nanite swarms now found their systems completely overloaded. Backup power failed. Emergency protocols crashed. The carefully maintained fleet that had taken 10,000 years to build was falling apart in real time. On the bridge of the Indomitable, the ship's artificial intelligence began an announcement that no one had expected to hear so soon. Time elapsed since combat initiation. 4 minutes, 12 seconds. Jiwan checked her tactical display and shook her head in amazement. 7,000 Vrelian ships disabled. Their fleet cohesion is at 12%. They've lost all strategic coordination. The remaining ships are trying to retreat, Minnow reported, but their navigation systems are still compromised by the nanites. Half of them are moving in the wrong direction. Taeyong brought up the engineering readouts. The singularity core is stable. We can maintain the black hole for another 6 hours if needed, but I don't think we'll need it that long. Commander Hayek studied the view screen carefully. He felt no satisfaction in this victory. The Vrelians had spent 10,000 years preparing for this moment, and it had taken less than 5 minutes to show them how wrong their preparations had been. It was almost sad. Almost. They still have 3,000 functional ships, Hyuk observed, and they're starting to adapt. Look at those 3 formations on the left flank. They've switched to manual controls and they're organizing a coherent retreat pattern. Should we stop them? Jiwan asked. No, but we need to make sure they understand this is over. Activate Phase 3. Deploy the consciousness disruption field. Minho's hands moved across his controls, but he paused. Sir, this has never been tested on non-human biology. We don't know if it will work the same way on Vrelians. There's only one way to find out. The field is non-lethal and temporary. If it doesn't work, we move to Phase 4. If it does work, we end this without any more damage. The young officer nodded and activated the system. From the Indomitable, an invisible wave of energy pulsed outward, expanding in a sphere that grew at the speed of light. It was a weapon that worked on the fundamental level of consciousness itself, a technology developed from humanity's deep research into neuroscience and quantum mechanics. The wave reached the first Vrelian ships. On the bridge of the Eternal Destroyer, Supreme Overlord Vexthar was shouting orders, trying to coordinate his scattered fleet, when he suddenly felt an overwhelming wave of exhaustion wash over him. His 3 eyes grew heavy. His thoughts became slow and confused. What is happening? He managed to say before his legs gave out. He collapsed into his command throne, his eyes closing. Around him, every Vrelian on the bridge was falling asleep, their bodies simply shutting down into deep unconscious rest. Across 4,000 Vrelian ships, the same scene played out. Bridge crews slumped over their controls. Warriors in their battle stations fell into peaceful sleep. Even War Master Krelnak, who had trained his mind for 300 years to resist every form of attack, found himself unable to fight the gentle but irresistible pull toward unconsciousness. The consciousness disruption field didn't harm anyone. It simply convinced the brain that it was time to sleep, triggering every natural mechanism that brought about rest. For the Vrelians, whose biology was different from humans but still relied on neural activity and chemical signals, the effect was the same. They slept and they would continue to sleep for several hours until the field's effects wore off. It worked, Ji-won said, her voice carrying a note of relief. All remaining Vrelian ships show no active crew. Life signs are stable but unconscious. Time check, Hyuk requested. 4 minutes 48 seconds since combat began. 12 seconds left. Hyuk made a decision. Ji-won, execute Phase 4. Final demonstration. Captain Ji-won had been waiting for this order. It was the most impressive part of their capabilities, saved for last to ensure the Vrelians understood exactly how outmatched they had been. Executing now. Initiating ship separation protocol. The Indomitable began to shimmer. Its hull, which had appeared solid and unbroken, suddenly revealed its true nature. The ship wasn't a single vessel. It was a collection of 1,000 individual combat drones, each one held together by electromagnetic fields and quantum bonding that made them appear as a unified whole. As the crew watched, the ship separated into its component parts, 1,000 drones, each one sleek and deadly, each one controlled by advanced artificial intelligence that could make decisions faster than any biological mind. They spread out in perfect formation, creating a sphere around the disabled Vrelian fleet. Each drone was more advanced than the Vrelians' best battleship. Each one carried weapons that could disable without destroying, shields that could absorb almost any attack, and engines that could move through normal space or quantum space at will. And all 1,000 of them were controlled by the crew of the Indomitable through their neural interfaces, making them extensions of human will and thought. Defensive perimeter established, Ji-won reported. All Vrelian vessels are contained. There is no escape route that we haven't covered. Taeyong was already working on the next phase. Beginning system restoration protocols. I'm sending instructions to the nanites to repair the damage they caused. Vrelian ships will have full function restored in approximately 30 minutes. Make sure their weapon systems are the last thing we restore, Hyuk said. I want them awake and functional but not dangerous. Minho watched his displays with something like awe. We did it. We actually did it. 10,000 ships defeated by one. Not by one, Hyuk corrected gently. By technology they never imagined existed. By tactics they had no way to predict. And most importantly, by the fact that we weren't trying to destroy them. We were trying to teach them a lesson. The ship's AI made its final announcement. Total time elapsed 5 minutes 0 seconds. Vrelian threat neutralized. 0 human casualties. Vrelian casualties. 0 dead, 0 critically injured, 10,000 sleeping peacefully. 5 minutes. The most prepared military force in galactic history had lasted exactly 5 minutes against a single human ship, and they had lost without a single death on either side, because humanity had learned that the true measure of military strength wasn't the ability to destroy, but the ability to win without destruction. Hyuk stood and walked to the view screen. The Vrelian fleet floated in space, disabled but intact, their crews sleeping but unharmed. Around them, 1,000 human combat drones maintained perfect watch, ready to defend or attack as needed, but hoping for neither. Open a channel to the Eternal Destroyer, Hyuk ordered. Wide broadcast to all Vrelian ships. When they wake up, I want them to hear this message immediately. Ji-won set up the communication system. Channel open, Commander, recording. Hyuk took a deep breath and began to speak. His words would be translated into the Vrelian language and broadcast to every ship in their fleet. Supreme Overlord Vexthar, War Master Krelnak, warriors of the Vrelian Empire. You have been defeated, but you have not been destroyed. Your ships are disabled, but they will be repaired. Your crews are sleeping, but they will wake unharmed. We did this to prove a point. He paused, choosing his next words carefully. You spent 10,000 years preparing to fight the humans you studied in ancient broadcasts. But you forgot that humans change, that we adapt, that we grow. The humans who sent those radio signals into space are our ancestors, not us. We are not the primitive warriors you expected to find. We are explorers who learned to fight only when necessary. We are builders who developed weapons only to protect what we built. We are teachers who prefer to educate rather than eliminate. The message continued, Hyuk's voice calm and steady. You have 2 choices now. You can surrender and we will discuss terms of peace. We will help you repair your ships. We will share knowledge and build friendship where you expected to find only war. Or you can refuse and we will show you what the next 5 minutes would look like. I promise you do not want to see that demonstration. He gestured to Jiwon to end the recording. Send it on continuous loop. When they wake up, that will be the first thing they hear. Around the Indomitable's former position, the 1,000 combat drones began to move in synchronized patterns, creating displays of light and motion that showed off their capabilities without threatening. It was a demonstration of power but also of control. They could have destroyed the Vrelian fleet. They had chosen not to. That choice was perhaps the most powerful message of all. The battle was over. Now came the harder part. Turning enemies into allies, teaching warriors to become something more than warriors. Showing an empire built on war what peace could offer. Supreme Overlord Vexithar woke slowly, his mind climbing up from depths of sleep deeper than any he had experienced in decades. For a moment he forgot where he was. Then memory crashed back like a physical blow. The battle. The human ship. The impossible defeat. His 3 eyes snapped open. He was still on his command throne on the bridge of the Eternal Destroyer. Around him, his crew was also waking, groaning and stirring as consciousness returned. Everything looked normal, except for the human message playing on repeat on every screen. War Master Krelnak pulled himself to his feet, his old joints protesting. He had lived for 300 years and fought in countless simulations, but nothing had prepared him for this. My lord, are you injured? Only my pride, Vexthar growled. He checked the chronometer. They had been unconscious for 3 hours. 3 hours during which the humans could have done anything. Could have destroyed them all. Could have taken them prisoner. Could have stripped their ships for technology. But when Krelnak checked the ship's systems, he found something shocking. My lord, our systems are being repaired. Someone is restoring our computers, our weapons, everything. The damage from the nanites is being reversed. The humans are fixing what they broke. Vexthar said slowly. Why would they do that? The message on the screens provided the answer, but it was an answer that made no sense to the Vrelian mind. Help repair your ships. Share knowledge. Build friendship. These were not the words of conquerors. These were not the actions of an enemy who had just achieved total victory. Vexthar made his decision. Open a channel to the human commander. I will speak with him. The channel opened and Commander Hyuk's face appeared on the screen. He looked tired but not triumphant. His expression was serious, but not cruel. Supreme Overlord Vexthar, I'm pleased to see you awake and well. You defeated us in 5 minutes, Vexthar said bluntly. You could have destroyed us just as easily. Why didn't you? Because destruction is easy, Hyuk replied. Understanding is harder. Building is harder. Making peace is harder than making war. We chose the harder path because it's the right one. I do not understand your kind. We prepared for warriors. You fight like nothing we imagined. You win and then you help your enemies. This makes no sense. Hyuk smiled slightly. Would you be willing to meet in person? I think this conversation would be better face to face. I'll come to your ship, unarmed and alone. Or you can come to mine. Your choice. Krelnak immediately protested. My lord, this could be a trap, but Vexithar had already made up his mind. If the humans wanted to harm them, they had already had ample opportunity. I will come to your vessel, Commander Hyuk, alone as you offered. We will speak as warriors, if not as equals. 2 hours later, Vexthar stood in the conference room of the Indomitable. The ship had reassembled itself from its 1,000-component drones, becoming once again a single unified vessel. The conference room was simple, almost plain, with a table and chairs designed for human proportions. A chair had been adapted for Vexthar's larger frame. Commander Hyuk entered, accompanied by Captain Jiwon and Taeyong. They were not armed. They wore simple uniforms with no battle armor. They looked more like teachers than warriors, which perhaps they were. Thank you for coming, Hyuk said, gesturing to the adapted chair. Please sit. Can we offer you anything? Food, water? Vexathar sat carefully, his massive form making the chair creak. You offer hospitality to someone who came to conquer you. You came to fight what you thought we were, Jiwan said. You didn't know what we had become. That's not entirely your fault. You were working with bad information. Taeyong pulled up a holographic display showing the timeline of human technological development. This is what happened after those radio broadcasts you intercepted. This is how we changed. In just 200 years, we went from basic spaceflight to quantum engineering. From nuclear weapons to nanite swarms. From manual controls to neural interfaces. But why? Vexathar demanded. Why advance so quickly? What drove you? Curiosity. Hyuk said simply. We wanted to explore. We wanted to understand the universe. We developed better ships to travel farther. We developed better computers to process more data. We developed new physics to explain what we found. And yes, we developed weapons, but only because we realized the universe might not always be friendly. Jiwan brought up another display showing human philosophy and culture. But we also developed art, music, literature, philosophy. We built cities and gardens. We created medicine that extended our lives and improved their quality. War was never our primary goal. It was just one small part of who we became. Vexathar stared at the displays. He saw images of human cities with parks and museums. He saw human ships designed for exploration, not conquest. He saw human faces laughing, creating, building, living lives that had nothing to do with warfare, and he realized with a shock how narrow his own civilization had become. For 10,000 years, he said slowly, we prepared only for war. Every resource, every mind, every moment devoted to defeating humanity. We have no art. We have no music. We build nothing except weapons. We study nothing except tactics. You interpreted your prophecy through the lens of what you already were, Hyuk said gently. You were warriors, so you saw the prophecy as predicting a war. But what if it meant something else? Vexathar pulled out a data device and displayed the original prophecy. The ancient text glowed in the air between them. Taeyong studied it carefully, his analytical mind working through the translation. This word here, Taeyong said, pointing to a symbol. In your language, it means to meet in battle. But in the ancient language it was written in, it also means to encounter or to find. And in this phrase, test of strength, could also be translated as measure of capability or even exchange of knowledge. Jiwan nodded. The prophecy didn't predict a war. It predicted a meeting, a first contact. You prepared to fight us when you should have been preparing to meet us. The silence that followed was heavy. Vexathar felt the weight of 10,000 years pressing down on him. His entire civilization had been built on a misunderstanding. They had sacrificed art, culture, joy, and growth, all to prepare for a battle that never needed to happen. What do we do now? He asked, his voice barely above a whisper. Hyuk leaned forward. Now you have a choice. You can return to your empire, tell them what happened here, and go back to your old ways. We won't stop you. You'll have your dignity and your ships. Or you can stay. Learn from us as we learn from you. Join our federation as equal partners. Build something new together. Why would you want us? Vexathar asked. We came to destroy you. Because you're more than just warriors, Jiwan said. You built a fleet that crossed the galaxy. You maintained unity for 10,000 years. You have discipline, determination, and capabilities we could learn from. You're not our enemies. You're people who made a mistake based on wrong information. We've all made mistakes, Taeyong added. Besides, the universe is big. There are real threats out there, not imagined ones. Having allies is better than having enemies. Vexathar stood and walked to the window of the conference room. Outside, he could see his fleet, his proud armada disabled and defeated but being repaired by the very enemy they came to fight. He saw the human combat drones moving among the Vrelian ships, helping rather than harming. He thought about his homeworld, about the generations of Vrelians who had lived and died knowing nothing but preparation for war. He thought about War Master, Krelnak, 300 years old and never having experienced art or music or joy. He thought about what his people could become if they learned to build instead of only learning to fight. "I need time," he said finally. "I need to consult with my commanders, with my people. This is not a decision I can make alone." "Take all the time you need," Hayuk said. "We're not going anywhere. When you're ready to decide, we'll be here, and whatever you choose, you'll have our respect." Vexthar turned to face the humans. "You defeated us in 5 minutes, but you spent 3 hours repairing the damage. You could have killed us all. Instead, you're offering us friendship. I do not understand your kind, Commander Hayuk, but I want to. I want to learn what makes humans so different from what we expected." "That's a good start," Hayuk said with a genuine smile. "Understanding is always a good start." 3 days passed while Supreme Overlord Vexthar consulted with his people. Commander Hyuk waited patiently, keeping the human combat drones in defensive positions but never threatening. Taeyong continued helping Vrelian engineers restore their ships, teaching them about nanite technology in the process. Jiwan had started cultural exchanges, showing Vrelian crew members human entertainment, art, and music. War Master Krelnak had been particularly affected by these exchanges. At 300 years old, he had never heard music before. When Jiwan played him a simple human symphony, the old warrior had sat completely still for the entire performance, his 3 eyes glistening with something that might have been tears. "Why does it make me feel this way?" he had asked afterward, his voice confused. "It serves no tactical purpose. It teaches no battle skills. Yet I feel something I cannot name. That's called beauty," Jiwan had explained gently. "It's what life is for when you're not fighting." Now on the 3rd day, Vexthar requested another meeting. This time he brought War Master Krelnak and 5 other high-ranking Vrelian commanders. They all looked tired, but somehow lighter, as if a great burden had been lifted from their shoulders. "We have made our decision," Vexthar announced as they gathered in the conference room. "The Vrelian Empire wishes to join your federation, but we have one condition." Hyuk leaned forward with interest. "What condition?" "We want to understand completely how you fight. Not to use against you, but to learn your philosophy. For 10,000 years, we prepared for war. Now we want to prepare for peace. But we must understand how a species can be both peaceful and powerful, how you can show mercy and still win, how you can help your enemies instead of destroying them." "That's not a condition," Hyuk said with a smile. "That's exactly what we hoped you would ask for." Over the next weeks, Captain Jiwan took charge of training programs for Vrelian military officers. She started with the basics, explaining human combat philosophy to warriors who had never considered that fighting had any purpose beyond victory. "We don't fight to destroy," she told a class of 50 Vrelian commanders, including Krelnak. "We fight to protect. There's a difference. When you fight to destroy, you use maximum force. When you fight to protect, you use minimum necessary force. The strongest warrior is not the one who kills the most enemies. It's the one who protects the most lives." Krelnak raised his hand, something he had learned from watching human students. "But we destroyed nothing in our battle. We used massive force. How is that protection?" "Good question," Jiwan replied. "You used massive force, but it was force directed outward at us. We used precise force directed at your systems, not your people. We could have used massive force too. We could have destroyed your entire fleet in seconds. Instead, we disabled it without killing anyone. That's the difference." The old War Master sat back thinking deeply. 300 years of certainty was being challenged, and it was uncomfortable, but also strangely exciting. Meanwhile, Taeyong worked with Vrelian engineers in the ship's workshops. He showed them something that shocked them. Human military technology was deliberately limited. Weapons had safety protocols that prevented excessive damage. Ships had override systems that could be activated by command to prevent civilian casualties. "You choose to make your weapons weaker?" one Vrelian engineer asked in disbelief. "Not weaker," Taeyong corrected. "More precise. A weapon that destroys a planet is useless if you want that planet to still exist afterward. A weapon that kills everyone is pointless if you're trying to save people. We build our technology to accomplish specific goals, not just to maximize destruction." 6 months passed. The Vrelian Empire officially joined the Federation. Their ships were fully repaired and upgraded with human technology. Their warriors were learning new skills beyond combat. War Master Krelnak had even started writing poetry in his spare time, something that would have been unthinkable before meeting humanity. Then the sensors detected something approaching from deep space. Something massive. Something that set off every alarm on every human and Vrelian ship in the sector. Commander Hayuk stood on the bridge of the Indomitable, now serving as the flagship for the joint human-Vrelian fleet. Beside him, Supreme Overlord Vexthar studied the sensor readings with growing concern. "What is that?" Vexthar asked. Minho, who had been promoted to Chief Sensor Officer, ran the data through every database. His face went pale. "Sir, according to these readings, it's a void swarm. The same species that destroyed the civilization that left those ancient ruins on the Vrelian homeworld." "How big is it?" Hurek asked calmly, though his heart was racing. "The main body is the size of a small moon, but it's surrounded by billions of smaller organisms. They consume everything in their path and use the matter to replicate. They've destroyed entire civilizations. According to the old records, nothing has ever stopped them. They just keep growing, keep spreading, keep consuming." Jiwan pulled up tactical projections. "They'll reach Federation space in 3 months. Current trajectory takes them through the Vrelian home system first, then toward Earth." The bridge fell silent. This was a real threat, not a misunderstanding like the Vrelian encounter. This was an enemy that couldn't be reasoned with, couldn't be taught, couldn't be shown mercy. The void swarm existed only to consume. Vexithar straightened his massive frame. "This is why the prophecy existed. This is what our ancestors were trying to warn us about. Not about fighting humans, but about preparing to fight with humans against the true enemy." "Can we defeat them?" Krelnak asked. "Even working together?" "I don't know," Hyuk admitted. "But we're going to try. Vexthar, I need your people to share everything you know about the void swarm from those ancient records. Taeyong, start developing weapons specifically for fighting a hive organism. Jiwan, coordinate with Vrelian tactical officers. Combine our strategies." The next 3 months were a blur of preparation. Human ingenuity met Vrelian determination. Scientists from both species worked together, creating new technologies. Warriors from both cultures trained together, developing hybrid tactics that used the best of both approaches. Krelnak and Jiwan worked especially closely, combining the Vrelian strength and endurance with human adaptability and creativity. They developed formations that had never existed before, strategies that no single species could have imagined. Taeyong and his Vrelian engineering counterparts created new weapons. Not weapons designed to show mercy this time, but weapons designed to stop an enemy that understood only consumption. Nanites that could disrupt the void swarm's ability to replicate, energy fields that could prevent them from absorbing matter, quantum bombs that could erase them from existence without leaving anything they could use to rebuild. When the void swarm arrived, it found something it had never encountered before: unified resistance. The combined human-Vrelian fleet met them at the edge of Vrelian space, ships from both species flying side by side. The battle was nothing like the 5-minute encounter between humans and Vrelians. It lasted for 3 days. Ships were destroyed. Lives were lost. Both human and Vrelian warriors died defending each other, protecting worlds they had only recently learned existed. But they won. The combination of human technology and Vrelian courage, human creativity and Vrelian discipline, human mercy and Vrelian strength proved too much for the void swarm. The hive mind that had destroyed countless civilizations found itself facing something it had no defense against. 2 species that had learned to fight together instead of against each other. 1 year after the battle, Commander Hayuk stood at his retirement ceremony. He was stepping down as fleet commander, ready to return to Earth and finally rest. The ceremony was held on a neutral station, with both human and Vrelian dignitaries present. Supreme Overlord Vexthar approached and presented him with a newly created medal, the Star of Unity. "This honor exists only because you taught us that there is more to strength than the ability to destroy. You showed us that mercy is not weakness. You defeated us in 5 minutes, but you spent months teaching us why you won. That is a greater gift than simple victory." Captain Jiwan, who was being promoted to fleet commander, stood beside her old mentor. "What will you do now, sir?" "Rest, Garden. Maybe write about everything that happened. Someone should document how 2 species that prepared to fight each other learned to fight together instead." Taeyong had already accepted a position as head of the Joint Human-Vrelian Technology Institute. Minho was training the next generation of officers, teaching both humans and Vrelians how to work together. War Master Krelnak gave the closing speech at the ceremony. The old warrior, now retired from pure military service and serving as a cultural ambassador, spoke with a voice that no longer carried only certainty but also wisdom. We prepared for 10,000 years to fight humans. We lasted 5 minutes. But in those 5 minutes, we learned something our entire history had failed to teach us. We learned that true strength is not about how fast you can destroy your enemies. It is about what you choose to build when you have the power to destroy but choose not to. It is about teaching when you could be conquering. It is about mercy when you could show cruelty. He paused, his 3 eyes sweeping across the audience of humans and Vrelians sitting together. The void,